working in InDesign on this. So you're still going to export it. So I'm just going to go File and Export. And because the mock-up images, they're low resolution, you can use, you can basically export at a low resolution. So you go from export, you can go right to JPEG, even PNG. PNG will probably be a little crisper, so you can do that. And I only have the one side here, but that's fine. It's going to give me the options. So although the resolution of the mockups is 72, I'm going to export at 150 just to get a little bit of a higher resolution there. So it's saying right now range all pages. I only have one page, so I'm just going to do all pages anyway. And I don't have separate pages, so I can kind of leave everything the way it is. I don't need to choose spreads, it's just going to choose the full page. 150 dpi, make sure anti-alias is chosen, that's just going to clean up any rough edges on some of the graphics. So I'll export that, and it'll take a second. That will be on my desktop. In the mockups folder, I gave you the JPEGs for, or the PSDs for a couple, and then the JPEGs as well. And you can choose to work with whichever one you want. Just know that there are some curves here. You can see that there's a little bit of a curve. And I'm not too concerned because it's a basic mockup, but you can match those if you use the warp tool. So you can revise when you put the panel in, you can revise it a little to match those curves. Don't be too concerned about that, but you'll see how it works. So you can use whichever ones you want, but remember you're doing the inside and the outside, so you're showing two views. You're going to choose to show this in those two views. So I've opened this one, so I'm going to open that file that I exported. And it should be here. There's the page, that's the blank page. So here's the page that I had. So I'll open that. So then I want to go panel by panel. I'm not going to bring the whole thing in at once because of course it has the folds. So I'm going to go in, and with my marquee tool, I'm just going to select the panel that I want, and I'll even move that over. If I put my cursor in here, I can just use my arrow tools and I can bump that over a bit. And then I'll copy, because this is just a flattened layer. I don't have to worry about layers or anything. I'm selected on that. I'll copy that, Command C, or File or Edit and Copy. And then I'll go into my mockup. I'll paste. I'll actually get my layers here. So you can see in the PSD you have a lot of layers, and you can flip through these and see what they are. I'm just going to click on this one, and you'll see it just gives me the artwork. That's all it is. But I'm clicking on this one, so whatever I paste in is at the top. So I paste, I get it in there, and this actually looks like it's probably a little higher in resolution. If I go inches, so yeah, it's pretty big. So 41 at 72 inches. So I probably should have exported this even at 300 dpi. So it's going to be a little low res, but it won't be bad. But you can see we have just that little bit of a black edge there. I'm going to grab my marquee before I start distorting this and just cut that off. It won't really matter, but I just want to make sure that there's nothing showing at the moment. So I'll delete that, select none, Command D, and then making sure I'm selected on that layer that I just brought in, I'm going to go Edit, And actually, before I do that, I have to make sure I put this in the right spot. So this is going to be the front cover. So I'll go Edit, Transform, Distort, and I'm just going to match up those corners, just like we did with the book. I'll match them up roughly, and then I'm going to zoom in and be a little more accurate here. And this mock-up, it's pretty close. It's not exact in size to our brochure, so there may be some slight off scaling, but don't worry about that. It'll be minimal. So I'll get that set there, and that all looks good, so I'll click the check mark. Now, if there is something like this one doesn't really have any, but if we had a little bit of warp, we could go back to Edit and work with the warp tool and adjust that as we need to. So if that did have a curve, I could adjust. You can see how I can adjust the warp to match the mock-up. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to leave it. So I'll just undo. And then the other thing, remember that when you bring this in, you can go into your layers and you can adjust these. So we have graphic under this right now. So you can see there's not much point in doing the layer modes because it's just going to show what's underneath. But if you wanted to have a little bit of a different darkness or tone to it, and you didn't have anything underneath, you could use those layer modes, or you can select, so remember Command click on the thumbnail there to select that, and I can do an adjustment layer. Remember we did the adjustment layers a while ago on one of our projects. So if I want to bring a little bit of a varied tone into this, I'll just use curves. That's kind of my go-to for that. And I'll adjust that just very subtly. You can see how you can just get a little bit of variation in that. And curves really is a good way to do contrast. But if you want, you don't have to. But sometimes when you do a mock-up like this, especially when it's something that has light hitting different portions of it in different ways, you may want to adjust some of those things. Okay, so I'm fine with that. I would go back and get my other panel. So I'll just move this selection over, but this is a little smaller, so I'm going to have to take some of that off. I'm just doing my Option key while I draw the marquee. You can see the minus sign on my cursor there. Just taking some of that away, and it's okay there, I think. I'll copy, go back in, and that was the middle, so I'll paste, and same process. So I'll get that roughly into place, Edit, Transform, Distort, match up the corners. This one does have a little bit of warp that I might want to adjust, but it seems pretty straight. So I'm going to go in, really refine that corner, because I don't want any white line gap there. Get that matched up. This is why you zoom in, so that you can really match up to the pixels. And get that matched up, and make sure the bottom corner there as well. Command 0. Looks good. I'll press return or click the check mark up top. And there we go. That's that panel. And then you do the other panel. And you can adjust the tones if you want, but when you bring this last panel in, I'll actually do that. You want to make sure that if there's anything that crosses over the spread, in this case it's that flower, I'll copy. I want to make sure that that aligns. So paste, move that over, So this is where it could get a little complicated, because if this is off in size by any, it might be difficult to align these, but we'll see. So edit, transform, distort. So I'm going to focus on getting those aligned more than anything. Everything else I can adjust if necessary. So I'll get that flower line there. And then down at the bottom, the flower is pretty good, so I don't really want to adjust much there, but I'm going to see what I can get away with. So every adjustment I make now, you can see it's affecting that flower. So I'm going to have to adjust things a little differently. I'll show you how I'll do that. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a little, very, very slightly off. That's fine. So now I have this odd edge. So I got to fix that. This is off and this is off. But in this case, I had something that would be a giveaway if it wasn't working. So I have to maintain that alignment. So I'm going to go into my mockup and find the one that I'm working with here. So it's essentially in here. So I'm going to find that panel, and that would be here. So command click to get the selection of that panel. I'll go back up to this graphic, so it was this one here. And I've got that panel selected. I'm going to invert that selection. So select, invert. Now I have everything around it selected, and I can, making sure I'm selected on that layer of that graphic, I can delete and get rid of that excess. And then I'll invert back, Command Shift I, and I'm going to go in and just clean up this. So I'm going to do it very simply. I'm just going to use my clone stamp and Option click and just clean that edge. I'm lucky because in this case I just have a solid color. If I had an image or a pattern, I'd have to be a little more careful about it. But everything down here is fine. It's not too skewed. So, oh, I think it just crashed. Yeah, it did. So that's fine. I finished, but I can't actually show you. Let's see if I can get it to come back. No, that's too bad. Photoshop sometimes does that when you zoom in, it crashes. But anyway, we got it lined up. So that's how you're doing it. You're just copying each panel in from that exported PNG, doing the edit and transform and skew. I'm going to try to activate this again. I don't think I can. And then make any adjustments you have to. Okay, once you're done, you're going to save that as a JPEG. So save it out as a JPEG, and that way you can just submit. Well, you'll have to, in this case, choose Save Copy, and that way you can submit a JPEG. You can do a PNG if you want, but don't submit a fully layered document. It's just going to be too big and unnecessary. So just give me the JPEG. Make sure that you note, even on these files, your name, and that's all.